Download our app today and enjoy tackle-busting benefits with great odds, more markets and same-game multi every NRL match at Palmerbet. Gamble responsibly. For Gamblers' Help, call 1-800-858-858.
Welcome everyone to episode 396 of Fergo and Freak. I'm your host, the Glorious League Freak, and today we've got a very special guest. It is Guy Wilson. He's here to talk about rugby league in South Australia and Adelaide, what's happening down there in South Australia. And I basically have gone into this podcast thinking I want to learn about rugby league in South Australia. So thanks for joining us, Guy.
Not a worry. Pleasure to be here, mate.
Now, what is your role within rugby league in South Australia?
Well, it's a non-official role. More so, I've been a volunteer for the National Rugby League of South Australia over here. So by background, I'm actually born and bred Sydney-sider, followed the Dragons. So quite unfortunate in that respect. However, I did move to Adelaide in late 2019. I recently got involved with the NRL over here, and I've met the people who run it, a lot of the people who play it, and a lot of the support people who work around it. Lots of good people over here. Keen to tell you whatever you'd like to know.
So you've come from like basically rugby league mecca on planet Earth in Sydney, where it's like we're just immersed in it here. You go over to Adelaide and you want to get involved in the game over there. Where do you start? Do you go to your local rugby league club? Is it hard to find there? Do you go to the South Australia Rugby League? Like, where did you start off?
Where did I start off, mate? I started off by, I suppose, making the move over here and not knowing or having a Scooby-Doo of what kind of rugby league presence, if anything, there was over here. And how it come about was I actually looked up the NRL South Australia because I remembered outside the Moore Park head offices at NRL HQ, they had NRL signs for all the states. So I knew that there was an NRL SA over here. I didn't know much about it, but I actually found them on social media, and they were asking for volunteers for their upcoming Harmony Cup, which was held back in February of this year. I got in touch. They said, yeah, come along, and I met a lot of the people who run it, again, who play it, got involved that way, and continuing to volunteer with them moving forward, mate. So really not so much if you say, hey, I want to go talk to the Central Districts Roosters or the South Adelaide Bulldogs. It was more so my, I suppose, opening to it come through socials.
Okay. Because I've heard a few people that have gone over there and it's been a similar sort of story where they're sort of like, I don't know what's going on with the game over here. And it was they had to find it through social media as well. I know Julie, who put me onto you and said you'd be a great guest, and thanks to Julie for that. She did a similar thing where she was like, I don't know what to do here. And the only way she was able to do it was through social media. So tell me what you know about the way that the game is going over there. Obviously, it's really difficult because coming out of COVID, it's hard to know about junior development numbers and things like that, and even having leagues just get going again and stuff like that. And people need to know that the COVID lockdown rules in South Australia have been different from the ones we've had in New South Wales and Queensland. Like sometimes they're on, sometimes it's off, and that sort of thing. So, how do you, coming from Sydney, when you have an overall look at the game in South Australia from a junior development standpoint, what are your thoughts? Is it going all right? Does it need more support from the NRL?
The latter, most definitely. And I can go through that with you at your discretion. What I've seen, it is very much a minnow league, and I do say that respectfully. In terms of the actual NRL management, you've got 4 full-time employees of the NRL over here, and up until last year, that was 2 through the COVID period. So the guy who runs it over here, a guy called Kelso McEwen, he's been with the organisation for over 12 years, originally a Brisbane fella, and played for the Adelaide Rams in their junior academy, their under-19s team, and Kelly Rourke, who's their state manager, who played league over in the UK. They've been the primary 2 for the last couple of years. And then they've taken on this year to what you call game development officers with Casey and Mackenzie, two great young girls who are doing the promotional side of things, you could say. The league itself is about, I think it's about 660 registered league players across men's and women's. In the men's comp, you've got 6 teams. The women's it's only been going it's in its 3rd season now. So it's more of what you would call a development competition. So more getting, I suppose, women interested in playing the game who are used to maybe playing other sports over here. They've already gone from 0 to 104 registered players, women players, that is, in the last 3 years. So I suppose a bit of an overview there. They did have some rough periods maybe 4 or 5 years ago with teams and participation, and COVID really knocked them about a lot, as you might imagine. When you're talking about, I suppose, the size and scale of the sport over here, definitely a lot smaller than what I was used to and you would know over on the East Coast. But the people within it are very passionate about it. So everyone who's in playing league, they love the sport and looking for the game to grow however they can. And I'm doing my bit where I can too.
That's awesome. It's interesting when you are not in one of the big rugby league areas, as you say, on the East Coast, and you find yourself in an area where rugby league is being played. And that's where you realise that the heartlands of rugby league is anywhere the game's being played, because the people in South Australia, when they're out there playing the game, when they're supporting the game, they're as much a part of the rugby league community as somebody from Penrith, and that's the thing that I think gets lost on some people. And that's why when people say, the heartlands of the game are here or there, it's like, man, if they're playing rugby league in Sri Lanka, that's where the heartlands of the game are as well. It's wherever the game's been played. The passion that people have over there to play this sport that doesn't have a local national side, that their friends probably don't know much about, they might deride and stuff. It really comes through when you talk to these players, these people, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100% agree, 1,000% agree with that. Yeah, because these people love the game as much as me or you do, or anyone who might play or support it in the so-called heartland states. And we are part of Australia. We're not that far away from Sydney and Queensland. The people over here do love their league and passionate about it, and genuine people who do want the game to grow. Although again, given the size and scale of the operation, that can be, I suppose, hard on many fronts in terms of when you've got 4 people in the NRL over here, full-time employees, and a lot of volunteers. So they love their league.
We've seen the NRL play a couple of games there on and off. I know COVID has messed with everything, but they did seem to have a schedule that they had in place. They played a State of Origin game there. Do you think that, obviously those things are important to get rugby league on the minds of the wider community over there, but do you think those games are more or less important than actual grassroots funding?
If it was one or the other, I think grassroots funding would definitely be, it would be, I suppose, a preferred option. If you were speaking to the NRL, they'd probably have their views, or the NRLSA, they'd have their views. I do believe, however, that when the Roosters come over and played the Storm here, and they did that for 3 years in a row, there was a great interest from the public over here. In fact, the game's average crowd was between 15 and 21,000 people at the Adelaide Oval, which is, mind you, isn't, let's say, a rugby league friendly venue, being round and quite wide and not rectangular like we're used to. But if we're talking about from a funding perspective, I'm sure that the grassroots funding would be something that the NRL over here would be looking to would be very interested in, to help, I suppose, bring on new staff who can do different things for the sport, but also promote the game to the wider Adelaide community. Because, like you said, a lot of people, even the league lovers over here, aren't completely aware about it. So, have I answered your question in that regard?
No, you have, because I think it's important to talk about this, especially from somebody that is actually there in an area where this sort of setup is happening, because we do see this happening in rugby league where they'll say, look, we want to promote the game in this area, so we're going to play a bunch of games here. And that's what we're doing. But I think I've always said it's important that it's all followed up by funding at junior level, because without that funding at junior level, you're basically giving people a sporting event to go to, and then you go away and the show's gone. It's like the Easter show, It's the Easter show turns up in Sydney. Not everyone turns into a farmer. And
yeah,
that's basically what it's like,
Yeah, you're dead right, mate. I mean, the people I know who've been to the games over here, the Roosters Storm, loved it. In fact, I see a lot of, and I'll go through that with you in a minute in terms of the actual people in the merch and NRL kits getting around. You see around town. Surprising, there's a fair few of them. But yeah, I mean, Origin, when they brought that over here, that was big time. That was for Adelaide. That was like the big shows coming to town. Unfortunately, that got knocked around with the COVID scheme of things, limited crowds, teams coming over 6 weeks after the end of the comp, flying in, flying out. It was a real shame that happened. However, it's very fantastic from our perspective anyway, that they're coming back here in 2023. And I think what you've just touched on is vital, is that it's great to bring that over here, and the league will make money off that from government or whatever it might well be funding. But what happens after that? The big show leaves town, and then what? So and that's the time. I feel that you're bringing rugby league as a centrepiece to a state that embraces events. You're bringing awareness of the sport. And if there's a further awareness of, hey, there is rugby league opportunities to play here in the state, and there'll be funding and promotion that needs to be done with that, then I think that everyone wins in that regard. There's no losers in that. So I would think that the funding on that front should come after the big shows in town.
Now, you're wearing, people won't say this on the podcast, but you're wearing an Adelaide Rams jersey. Yeah. The Adelaide Rams are really weird because they were not around for very long. They really didn't. When they were playing, it wasn't like they were really straight away part of rugby league psyche. But they have hung on to rugby league psyche, and they've become almost more fashionable the longer they've been gone. It's really weird.
Yeah, I know. People might say the same about me when I'm gone.
See, when I'm gone, they'll be just like, oh, thank God that's over.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, well, I suppose us from our interactions on Twitter and the like, and I suppose a bit of a small cult following in that respect from the greater league community. And I mean, going back to the days when they did come into the competition, they sort of weren't really thought of in any high regard on the East Coast. I mean, they were born out of, like many things, they were born out of a war.
You would remember too. It was everyone that was in rugby league at the time or followed the game saw them as a very cynical. Well, they've been made overnight, and no one liked them really because they symbolised something terrible that was going on around us all at the time.
You're dead right, mate. And I'll probably take it a step further. Is I mentioned at the start that I was a Dragons fan, and if anyone remembers the 1996 seasons at the start, when this is all sort of broken out, is we lost our coach Rod Reddy and club legend who'd moved on to Adelaide. And my first thought and impression of the Rams was like, what the what?
Yeah.
Why's our coach gone there? And I was invested in the Dragons, and at that time they were going through their own struggles. There was talk of mergers with the Roosters, and this is only a couple of years off the back. We made 2 grand finals in a row. It was like my club was falling in a heap, and our coach had left to move to the Rams. So my impression of the Rams was like you just said, it's like, oh right, it's greed, it's Murdoch, and it's all this kind of stuff. To the people of Adelaide though, they didn't care, and they didn't know the history behind it, and they got behind the Rams. I mean, their very first crowd, their Rams game was, I think, around 27,000 people. The average crowd in their first year was 15,000 for a team that basically had a false start in 96 when the court cases knocked them on the head. They had to get what players they could for 97. The team, performed, I suppose you could say, admirably in some senses, but it really did struggle, and they still averaged that. So, if we talked about the Adelaide Rams from an East Coast, let's call it, perspective, and the rugby league follower, yeah, they were quite, I suppose, despised and mocked and sort of like, well, what are they even doing here? Why are you bothering with them?
Yeah, and that's the weird thing. And when they were wound up by News Limited, it was like it was a non-event. It was an absolute non-event to anybody that was in New South Wales or Queensland or Victoria. And I chuck in Victoria, they didn't have their team yet, but it was just a non-event. So, and this is the weird thing though. Talk to anybody that remembers the Rams and they'll be like, oh, yeah, I love the Adelaide Rams. I wish they were back. Why is that? That's so weird.
Oh, well, there's many things I could answer to that one. But I can also say just on that is that I find that here too in Adelaide. So, Adelaide's a city. I was saying this to, actually, Jason Nightingale and Jeremy Lattimore came over 2 weeks ago as part of a league community. It's called the Roads to Regions program. And I was chatting to them at a training session they did with some kids, right? And they were just sort of, Adelaide hadn't been here before and their impressions. And I said to them, Adelaide's, it's big enough to be a city, but it's small enough to be a community. Mm-hmm. And what Adelaide does, it actually supports all its teams. So, be it netball or be it, the Adelaide United, football club, so soccer, Power or the Crows, Adelaide Strikers and the Redbacks. They all get behind these teams. And a lot of people who I bump into, if I'm wearing an NRL kit or if I'm wearing something Rams or something like that, is people had been to games in the past. Oh, yeah, I went along to a Rams game, loved it. How'd they go? Oh, they got flogged by whoever or whatever it might have been. But the first question they usually ask to me is like, why did they get rid of the Rams? What happened to them? And I said, that's a long story.
Yeah.
I might plug the Rugby League Digest podcast who've done an in-depth analysis of the Super League war and talk about that. And I say, well, look, if you want to listen to them, they'll give you the background to the whole thing. But ultimately it was, I suppose, in the end, it was Melbourne seemed like the bigger target and the bigger fish to fry. So that's where the funding went.
Yeah. And it's like, it's where do you start with the Super League war? Like I've had people, I've got one friend I've had for about 8 years in Adelaide, and I've asked her a little bit about it, but she's not into sports, so she doesn't really care. But then I've had other people that will say to me, like, what happened with Perth and Adelaide, and why were they shut down? And it's like, oh, well, I got to take you back to 1990.
Let's go back in the time tunnel.
yeah, and it's like, I mean, when me and Andrew did a whole Super League thing, and we basically started back in the 70s. I think we started in 78, where the New South Wales Rugby League was like, we need to do something here, and it just goes from there. So it is difficult to explain, but I think the easiest way to explain it is probably they were the easiest teams to shut down when we were trying to shut down a lot of teams that were difficult to shut down as well. And it was really unfortunate, but I think that now, obviously, Perth is probably next on the agenda for expansion in Australia, and then Adelaide after that. Do you feel as though Adelaide, though, needs a figurehead to be at the forefront of any NRL bid so that they can – there's always that media person you can go to. There's always that person that everyone knows. If you want to talk about getting an NRL team in Adelaide, you talk to this person, and they'll always be good for a quote, or they'll always be the one that's working behind the scenes on this.
Most definitely. I mean, Perth is a common one when there's the talk of now that the Dolphins are in. If they're going to stay the Dolphins or give themselves a name to go with the Dolphins, who knows? But they're number 17, and then it's the right 18th is the big fish now, and Perth and New Zealand seem to be the two areas that pop up in general conversation about who's going to be the 18th team. And I'm sort of maybe flying the flag a bit here, but it's like, well, what about us? There's pros and cons to a lot of the, I suppose, proposed new sides that would come in for the 18th team. But coming back to your question is that there isn't that true figurehead for Adelaide to promote or fly the flag. I mean, if it's me and the head that you're looking at on your screen right now that your viewers can't see, we might be in a bit of trouble. But, put it this way, Perth, Mark Geyer went and played there for a number of years and has gone on to have a great career in the media and still going on Triple M, if I understand it. So he's a natural person who's there day in, day out talking, and can pop up talk about the Reds, right?
Mm.
If it's Adelaide, we don't have someone like that who's in the media. I mean, if you think of maybe the players for the Rams of the day, it was, like Kerrod Walters. I mean, we might be able to wheel out Chubby Checker if he's still going. He might be a bit of an advocate for us. One grand appearance for us. But coming back to I suppose your original point is, it would need that figurehead to promote and talk up, the opportunity here. I mean, I'm happy to do that with you as much as you like here today, but I'm not that media personality or that person that's known to the wider community to go, well, actually, you know what? Maybe Adelaide should be in the conversation a bit more because I see the benefits to what an Adelaide team could bring to the NRL. And ultimately, it is called the NRL, but it's only played in 3 states and a territory. National is embodiment of something, of a whole country. It's only played in half the country. So, places like Adelaide and Perth would make the competition truly national.
Yeah, and look, the way I see it is like you've got a city of 1 million plus people in Australia and you don't think that they should have a rugby league team? Like, what's wrong with you? It makes no sense. It's silly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, too. I mean, I'll take it back though. But when I was in Sydney and before I moved here, and if someone would have asked me, oh yeah, Adelaide, what about them for an NRL team? I wouldn't say I would have been sceptical at first, but I would have been like, oh, geez, really? Oh, okay. But if you, I suppose, open up sort of, I suppose, a few ideas and have the conversations, go, well, actually, what would a successful team in Adelaide do for the National Rugby League? And I do say successful. We can talk about what successful team might look like, but a successful team in Adelaide, I think, would add so much to the NRL. Mm-hmm. In terms of expanding its footprint, giving it, I suppose, more cred in terms of a national sport. Amongst a few other things. So, look, I can see the benefits, but yeah, I mean, in terms of promotion and doing all that kind of thing, I talked you through the NRL over here, and bless them, they are working their backsides off doing whatever they can for the sport over here. But it's a team of 4 full time. So, who that person is, we will see.
Yeah, I haven't got any idea. I feel like it's going to be I feel like it'll be someone weird like Jared. You find out Jared McCracken's decided to settle in Adelaide for the last few years, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to do this." I don't think right now there's anybody that is the figurehead. And look, I don't think they've really got one for Perth either, to be honest with you. Yeah. And I think that's half their problem as well.
Yeah. I know Bedsy, Danny Baderis, has got relatives over here. I've seen him at the Adelaide airport a few times. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he'd be willing to forego a Newcastle arrangement and come over here and fly the flag. But yeah, I mean, it's like marketing or branding or trying to get your brand out there for anything. It's that constant presence. It's almost like just dropping the seeds and watering them and keeping yourself in the public mindset so that people might go, well, actually, you know what? There might be something in this. It's like if you're going on a holiday. It's like, where would we go? Oh, if you're a league, we'll go to Queensland. We'll go where it might be. It's like, actually, why don't we try Adelaide? See what it's like, And when you actually do go and visit and see something, it becomes real, and you can see like, oh, okay, then this place might have a lot to offer, and it would open people's minds. So, yeah, mate, time will tell.
Yeah, because I think it's important to get that, and I think that's probably the best thing about playing games in areas we do want to expand into, is that it takes it from being an abstract idea to, look, there's people there. The Adelaide Oval wouldn't be where you'd want to play the games, but here's the ground, here's the people. We're playing there tonight. Look, you're watching it on TV. Everything's fine. The world didn't implode. And I think that's an important aspect of that. What do you think about the team name? Do you think that it would have to be Adelaide Rams? Because I think it would be at this stage.
I agree. I do. And I think to your point you made a little bit earlier about the Rams were sort of like that despised red-headed stepchild of the team back in the day, that when they were let go, I was like, now there's a bit of, I suppose, that cultish kind of a following to it. And, it would be a recognised brand to many people over here. I think the name just rolls off the tongue really well, you know. 1, 2, 3, 4, Adelaide Rams. It's just, to me, yes, I'm absolutely all over the Rams. I mean, some people do chat to me about, would we relocate XYZ over here? It's like, well, I don't know. That's a whole different conversation. But I think if you're coming into Adelaide, you want to give them a brand and identity, and the Rams would be that.
Yeah, true. I mean, like I've said before many times, Adelaide needs a successful Cronulla Sharks, but I would prefer the Adelaide Rams.
The Ram Sharks.
The Ram Sharks. Oh, jeez.
Right, the old JV, yeah. So, but I mean, I've walked around. I mean, when I first moved over here, I was one day, example, right? So my other half, she's got young kiddies, and one of them plays at the local Aussie Rules Club, and I was up there just in a Dragons hat, and some bloke come up behind me, and he goes, "We're going to smash you today." I'm like, "What?" And he goes, he was a Broncos fan, and we were playing that day, and we got chatting. He'd come down from Queensland with his family because they were working in the security, so big industry over here. So and they relocated down. He didn't have anywhere for his kid to play league, so he started talking, and then a conversation sort of grew. Oh yeah, I'm from here, I'm from there, and a lot of them were actually league fans. So you get a lot of people from interstate, so Queensland and New South Wales, who've moved over here for various reasons. One of them is, be at work, or other is actually opportunity to buy a house, because it's a lot cheaper to buy housing over here than on the East Coast.
You can buy a nice driveway in Sydney, though, for the same price, to be fair.
Mate, some lovely coloured concrete. Yeah, I know. Gleamed right up. But there are a bunch of expats over here, and funnily enough, people who, I mean, they'll all watch State of Origin when it's on. So there's that kind of link to league. But there are some people I've come across, and some who I've now know as friends who actually do follow a side, albeit not as closely as maybe me or you, like Parramatta or a South Sydney or the like. But there's an interest here. But again, bring the big show in town like State of Origin, great. But what are you going to do after that? So if they're serious about it, invest in here, and you'd be surprised what could grow.
Yeah, and I think another issue that you have with trying to get a team in Adelaide is that you get people that are involved in the game, and a lot of it is media driven, where they say, okay, team in Adelaide, what does that do for me? And it's like, it's not about you. It's about the people in Adelaide having a team, or what it does for them. And I immediately think, imagine what a game between Adelaide and Melbourne would be like, and having that twice a year, it'd be great for both clubs.
Oh, couldn't agree more, mate. Could not agree more. I mean, the Melbourne Storm, they sort of really sort of kicked off, although they did both play in the comp in 98. They've gone now on to be the stats I read last year anyway, were the most popular club in the comp, be it, social media followers, members and all alike. And this is from a team that, in a state that is not considered rugby league heartland. They're a one-team town in a very competitive environment with all the other Aussie rules teams and all that kind of thing down there. But they're a very, very popular side. Having Adelaide gives a strong rivalry to Melbourne in many senses, and would, I think, do wonders for the competition. And again, it comes down to what would a successful team in Adelaide do for the National Rugby League. I think it'd do great things.
Yeah. It's in many ways, I mean, it would be a much easier step than Perth. Perth does have that. Perth is great for the time zone difference. Adelaide's a bit, because you've got that half-hour time zone difference, it doesn't really make as big a difference than the Perth game would. But just the travel to Perth is so much longer, and whereas Adelaide's like a half step to that. And part of me, like, I've been pushing for Perth to have a team almost since they were kicked out. Part of me thinks it would be really cool to have Adelaide next and then Perth. But Perth is, I think the thing going Perth's way is that they're a little bit further down the track in terms of their junior systems. And, I mean, they've produced NRL players just in their own right at the moment. So I think that's where they probably get the nod. But, yeah, I just think that it's time. It's time for the NRL to become a national competition. And once we get Perth and Adelaide there, like, you can go to some strange places. You can have a team in PNG, you can have a team in Darwin, you can have teams all over the place. But none of it matters until you get the national competition bedded down and sorted.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned before there's pros and cons to whatever, I suppose, 18th team they're looking to go to. But I mean, yeah, in terms of Perth v Adelaide, if we were to talk about that, is that, I mean, Perth, and very good credit to them, they've developed a great junior league over there, and quite a strong domestic little competition. Over there, they're a city of 2.1 odd million people, so a team over there would naturally tap into what I call eyeballs, so new people watching the sport over there. But as you've suggested, and as something that I've been mindful of, is the sheer distance of the place. So from the East Coast cities and the teams in the NRL, you're talking 4 to 5 hour flight from Sydney and more from other team centres, you could say. Adelaide is less than half that, and with that comes cost. And one of the issues that the Western Reds did have when they were struggling was the sheer cost of transportation, and there's transportation of them to the East Coast to play games, but also teams to go over and visit them. With the junior competition here in Adelaide, I've gone through that with you, and it is quite small, and again, respectfully, I suppose at minnow status, you could say. One thing you can change about that with investment is to grow our junior leagues here. Mm-hmm. One thing you can't change about Perth is its geography. It's always going to be 4 to 5 hours flight from the East Coast, if not more, if you're in New Zealand or up in Queensland. So, I mean, again, I was probably more selling the idea of Adelaide. Again, I'm an advocate of Adelaide. That's why we're having this conversation. Mm-hmm. But there are benefits to potentially Adelaide, to at least be in the conversation with the likes of Perth and New Zealand, if you want to talk about that too. And just if people, I suppose, more open to the discussion, have a bit more of a think about it themselves, then they might see some benefit to it as well.
Now, looking at the NRL this season, because I don't just want to talk to you about Adelaide, I'd love to talk to you about footy as well. What have you thought about the NRL this season? Like, I think the footy has been better this year than it was last year. I think last year it was terrible, but just overall, like, what are your thoughts on the NRL season so far?
I'm with you. I keep agreeing with you. It sounds like I'm a yes man, mate, but I am agreeing with you.
Look, I don't get people on here that agree with me. I don't want anyone that disagrees.
We can pick a fight about something if you want. But look, I'm with you. I mean, last year, bear in mind everything that was going on in the world. It was great to have sport on TV, and it's been 2020 as well, because it was far worse then. But I felt last year that the game turned into something I hated seeing something I loved just turn into something I despised. Mm-hmm. And that was with, I suppose, a lot of what's been discussed before in terms of rule changes, and things were just changed and manipulated. You had some very, very great teams and some very ordinary teams, and just, it was lost on me. And it got to the point towards the back end of the season, this was just me, I couldn't watch it.
Yeah.
I stopped watching it after about 2/3 of the season, watched the semi-finals and got back involved in it as well. Had nothing to do with the fact that my Dragons were toilet, because I love the Dragons, but, I love the sport of rugby league. The Dragons are nothing without rugby league, So, this year, from the first round, it just seemed as though it's got its shit back together. It was, competitive from day dot. The teams were, they were holding on to the ball. They were hitting their moves. They were, it seemed like a slick product again. Competitive as well. And through the first, 6 rounds of the competition now, I've watched more games than I haven't. Put it this way, on Monday, watching the Tigers go round against the Eels, I don't think I've ever cheered for a side that's not the Dragons as much as I did the Tigers. And that, for a game, to me, was just, it was spectacular. Loving it this season. Yeah,
it's interesting that last year there were probably 3 or 4 teams that were putting on a good show, and now it feels like there's look, you could say that there's 2 or 3 teams that aren't putting on a good show this year, but then, as you say, last weekend we watched that game with the West Tigers, and that was just epic to watch. So it's really interesting how it turned around so quickly.
Yeah, no, true. Yeah, I think my Dragons are still going to struggle. I'm not sort of holding my hopes too high. I'm hopeful without being confident that they might turn things around. But there's a good strong core of sides, and some sides getting back off of the canvas too, like the North Queensland Cowboys. I mean, who didn't have them running last or at least bottom 2 or 3 in predictions before the start of the year? And if you watch them play, and old hardhead Toddy Payton's just, he shaked the living, what out of them, I think, from last year, and they look a real solid side. Newcastle came out of the gates quite strong, probably unlucky against the Dragons last week in some respects, but again, one of those sides that, you got big one-team towns there that, the core fans and the great fans that follow those clubs, deserve to have a strong team. So they're showing signs there. It's and that makes me happy. But yeah, I mean, overall, mate, I'll be very interested to see how it pans out, like you will, no doubt. Panthers are just, it's going to take some serious injuries or something, I think, to stop them. But maybe the Storm can do it.
Yeah, I mean, watching them play against the Storm in, I think it's Magic Round, it might be, that they face one another. It's if the Storm can't beat Penrith, it's legitimately going to be a case of like, well, who's going to beat them then? Because I can't believe they're my team. I'm just like, oh my god, what's going on?
Well done.
I feel like remember that video of that guy that won Lotto, and then they did a video of him and they said recreate doing the scratchy, and he won another 250 grand, and he was like, and he doubles over and goes, please don't kill me. I feel like that guy.
Oh, mate, yeah. Well, I mean, Penrith were a team, I mean, they were on the absolute rack going back 7 or 8 years ago in terms of, the finances and Dyer, and then they wheeled Uncle Gus in. And, I'm sure it's not all due to him, but, I mean, they might have been in a bad way without him. I mean, what were your thoughts on the Gus era?
I think they needed, once again, I think you need a figurehead sometimes to come in and be empowered and do things that have needed, and Penrith needed things done for many, many years. I mean, I remember there was a point where we had brought in 2 junior players over the course of 2 seasons, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like, it's outrageous. So, we needed somebody to come in, and the first thing he did was he come in and he asked the players about Matthew Elliott as a coach, and so Matthew Elliott was gone really quickly. That was the first big step. And then after that, it was a case of like, well, there's things that you haven't been doing, like using your junior base, which is your biggest asset, so let's start doing that again. And it was really basic stuff, but I think that we needed, and every team needs a figurehead to be able to come in, and everyone knows you go to Phil Gould. Phil Gould's coming to talk to you. It's. I think everyone needs that. I think that's a problem at the Dragons right now. I think they need a figurehead that can be overseeing everything, because at the moment I think you've got the coach who I can see what he's trying to do, and I think it's going to take longer than most people expect. But there's no one. I don't know who the boss is at the Dragons, and I'm a diehard rugby league supporter, and I think you need a boss there that is accountable and that says, look, the buck stops with me. If we win, I don't take credit, because you can't have them taking credit. But if we lose, you come and talk to me about it. And I think that a lot of teams suffer from not having that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you might remember, and he got ridiculed by a lot of people out there, but when he went and did, this is Gus, sorry, went and did the review when Mary was in charge, went down there for a couple of days, and when I heard that was going on, it was like, my hopes got up. It was like, maybe we might snare him, because I'd seen what he did for the Roosters. I mean, the Roosters they were going to merge with us in the mid-90s, right? Gus comes along with Uncle Nick. Look at them. They're probably one of the most sustained powerhouses in the comp, since the turn of the century. Comes along to Penrith. Penrith are on the rack. Has a look at the place, dissects it, root and branch exercise, builds that club up. Now look at that sustained success they got now, and the competition they won last year is like, well, maybe not a monkey off the back, but it's I suppose, respectful of the processes that they follow, and showing that that's right. And you guys are set up now for years to come. I mean, it's an absolute factory out there of players. I mean, you lose Nathan Cleary or Brian Tuttle, and look at the boys coming through, and they're ready-made to go. The Dragons, I thought, we're going to get Gus. A lot of people are going, oh, not Gus, not him. It's like, no, he's the kind of guy we need. But didn't happen. Whether there was a discussion about that or not, I don't know. But I mean, if I was the head of the Dragons club, I would have bitten his arm off to get him in, because that figurehead, what that guy could have done for a club which was the first club you ever followed as a fan and as a kid, would be wonders. But hey, we are where we are now. Again, I'm hopeful without being too confident. But I mean, when Anthony Griffin come in, he'd been obviously a Penrith coach before, and he did speak of junior development as a strategy moving forward. I haven't seen that happen yet. He's brought a lot of players in who might have been in the last chance saloon in other clubs. Guys like George Burgess, he's taken a bit of a gamble on with injury. He did take a gamble on Jack Bird as well from the Broncos. That seems to have paid off. But I mean, only today we've lost Tarek Sims. Who's going to go to the Melbourne Storm.
To the Storm.
Oh
my God. Yeah. What a signing. Like, perfect. I think I said it on a podcast even. If he goes to Penrith, he's going to be the perfect replacement for Kikau and maybe even better player. Or that or the Storm, and he goes to the Storm and it's like, oh man, this guy's going to be playing Origin.
He was playing Origin last year and was almost man of the series. And Dragons fans will have their views on that. And I don't expect people to agree with me, but I just saw a guy who was peak state of Origin last year, for whatever reason, wasn't playing at his best in the club. Doesn't want to be extended. Okay, there might be a pricing thing or something like that. But I mean, if Melbourne are looking to pick you up, you got something. But when we've got, again, a bunch of other players who wouldn't have hit the heights of Tarek Sims now in the club. But the junior development that was spoken of in the first instance when he signed, I remember his first interview when he was talking to Paul Kent and I think it was Paul Kent when Ben Ikin was still there on NRL 360 was junior development. Well, that hasn't transpired. I could live with the results that we might have had over the last 2 years if it was like, let's throw some juniors in, get them some experience, get them toughened up, because in the long run that would pay off. I'm just not sure that where we're going right now is great. I mean, Tyrell Sloan, he's back in resis or not even playing now. Amon may or may not be ready yet, but he's sort of playing off the bench. But there's no real juniors coming through that I'm seeing. So, I'm quite pessimistic in that regard.
Yeah, it's part of me wonders if when a club does go and says, look, we're committing to our junior development, whether it takes a few years for that to obviously kick in. And I think the thing with Penrith is maybe that it didn't take that long just because it's a numbers game. Like the Penrith Junior District is so bloody massive that it's just if 1% of 1% makes it, that's a test player. They've got a couple of test players come through every year. And a part of me thinks that with other junior development, and look, the Dragons have one of the best junior development system bases you could ever want. That South Coast up into St. George, man, give me that any day. But part of me wonders if it's just that numbers game, that it's just going to take them a little bit longer for it to kick in for them. Because I'm hoping it does, because when you see it every so often with the Dragons, they'll have 3 or 4 players come through and it's like, man, how about this dude? Look at this dude. Look at this dude. But it hasn't happened for a while, which is a bad sign for the Dragons.
Yeah. I mean, this is now, and I'll talk about the St. George Dragons, this is now the longest period between grand final appearances in the club's history. Our last one, 2010, I was there. I remember before that I'd seen us lose however many grand finals, 4 or 5, some in person, and I just thought to myself, if I just see him win one grand final, I'll be happy for him to get the spoon forever and after. That's the state I was at. Now, I'm not that happy, right? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is the longest between grand final appearances, and it's sad in that respect. I do love my club, absolutely. I mean, Dragons fans are quite vocal and probably like the Simpsons mob with the torches and the bloodhounds out the front of the house wanting to tear the joint down kind of thing when things go wrong. But passionate fans too, very passionate fans. And I mean, when the Dragons are strong, you do see the crowds come back, and final series, it's a great atmosphere, as it is for Penrith. When the Sharks went in the other year and they won, like fans, for them to finally see a competition. I mean, they're mortal enemies of the Dragons, and going in, it was like, oh, the bloody Sharks. But when they actually won, it was like, you know what? Good on them. I'm stoked for them because they've got to see a grand final like I got to see in 2010, or like Panthers fans got to see last year that mightn't have been around in 2003 or too young for it. But I mean, overall, I want my club to succeed, but I actually do like seeing the success of others.
Yeah, so do I. I think that's why I can really enjoy watching the Storm because, I mean, we're watching something that on a world sports scale is absolutely ridiculous. That for them to be so good for so long and they lose all of these great players and you just know the next year, oh, yeah, they're going to be one of the top two teams. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
The thing about the Dragons, I always think, is I want to see them be successful so that they have to say, we have to play at the new SFS because we can't fit everyone in elsewhere. And we're sorry, we know you want to play at Kogarah, but we're losing like $3 million if we play at Kogarah. You know, that's what I like to see out of them because when they're going good, like the Dragons are probably one of the few Sydney teams that when they're going really good, they could legitimately get 50,000 to a regular season game against the right opponent in the right situation.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. And they're also one of the clubs too that their fan base, and I think a lot of this stems from their historic, 50s, 60s period, is that they've moved outside the area. So they've got fans in a lot of parts of Sydney, but also Queensland. Whenever you see them play up there, there's a big contingent up there. So you are right. And if they were to take games to the SFS, the new SFS, and I can't wait to see it when I come back over and have a look at it. It looks absolutely awesome. They are one of those clubs that could potentially sell that joint out against the right opposition. And I mean, go back to that Tigers Parramatta game on Monday, just to see the full crowd there at that awesome stadium, which may I suppose lend itself to making the game as great as it was. That just adds so much to the spectacle. And Dragons again, they're dear to my heart. I'd love to see them go like that and fill out the stadium and have some sustained success.
Yeah, I think that of all of the teams in Sydney that have tried to be an overall Sydney team and it's been unsuccessful in many different ways, I think South's kind of tried it, but they always said, look, we're still South Sydney, but we're trying to be overall a Sydney team. I think the Dragons, if they were going well and they said, hey, we're all of Sydney's team, but we're staying the Dragons, I just think it would just be, they'd walk over the top of everyone else, to be honest. I think that their brand is so strong and their history is so strong and, and as on top of all that, they can always go and play games in Wollongong, which is just to me, people see it as a problem for them, man. I think it's the biggest bonus any club could have.
Yeah. Have you been down to win at the Wollongong Stadium there?
Yeah, I went and saw the test match between Australia and New Zealand. I think it was 2019. That's the only game I've seen there. And it was fine. It was obviously it doesn't compare to the new stadiums that are being built, but not much does. I mean, Penrith Football Stadium doesn't. But it was fine. It was a good occasion. It was not too bad to get to, considering that it's kind of shoehorned next to the beach. Got parking near it, which is my big thing. If you can get parking near a stadium, I'll turn up to it. So I liked it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I mean, I took my darlings Adelaide, and I took her over to watch us play the Knights, 3-4 years ago now, pre-COVID, and we stayed at a hotel nearby and walked to the ground. Yeah, driving and getting to the ground, it is a bit of a proverbial shit fight, but to get in there and the spectacular views, I mean, you're sitting in the main stand looking over the Tasman Sea. It's quite good for a ground, but again, we only play there half of our home games, and then we'll play a few at Kogarah. There'll be the one at the upcoming Anzac Day match, which is sometimes our home game. We might throw the odd one out at Parramatta, whatever it might well be. It's sort of just with the JV, and I'm not here to death ride it or criticise it in any way. It's just we're trying to be a few things to a few different sort of avenues here. We're not one. Right, this is us, this is it. I mean, South Sydney Rabbitohs are South Sydney Rabbitohs. They might well play at Homebush, but it's the Rabbitohs. Penrith is Penrith. They're playing Penrith. We're St George and Illawarra. We're the Dragons. We play here and here, and it's again, there's no easy answer to what would be the best for them because the people in charge down there will know far better than I. But it's just this we're trying to be a few different things, and I don't know if that's the best thing for us. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I get what you mean totally. The whole, it's like if you said, well, where should the Dragons be playing? You could literally say, well, they kind of want to play at Cogra, but they should play their biggest games at the Olympic Stadium. But then there's also Wollongong, and it's like you can't really run a team like that. Like, I think if you had two venues and you stuck to them, you can do that. But to try and cover all in bases, I would love to see them just say, look, the SFS, this new SFS, that belongs to us. We're Sydney's first great team, and we're always going to be the great team, and watch us take ownership of it, because no one cares about the Roosters. That's what I'd love to see them do.
Yeah, okay, I won't disagree. Go in there and finally we merge and take over them like we were going to do in the 90s. But I'd love to see the Drags come back and firing on all cylinders again. I might sound like a bit of misery guts with what I mentioned before about the status of where they are at the moment, but look, they are a club that's they're quite sustained. They do have a good brand presence. If we just get a few of the right cogs in place, I reckon we can get this machine firing. It just depends on what those cogs and where those cogs are, who they are. Time will tell, mate. Time will tell. Hopefully I get to see another premiership before I fall off the tree.
Look, I got mine in 2003 and I was like, I'm happy now. I can die. And so everything else last year was bonus. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's cool as well. But I got mine in 2003.
Yeah. I was there in 2003. I went along and, down in I was in the southwest corner with a few friends in the rain there. And that was a great old night.
Oh, man. It's because I obviously I was a young dude and I thought I'm going to have a heart attack and I don't care. I didn't care.
So was that the first one you'd seen?
Look, I was alive when they won in 91, but I was just too young to really, I knew it was awesome and I got that it was amazing for the district and stuff, but I was just too young to really appreciate it all. And so I consider 2003 to be my premiership, my first one. So I'm like you. I hope everyone experiences that because it is bloody incredible. And you've always got that in your heart. And you can always, if times are tough, you can always think, man, remember when we had those great players back then? And you can, that's normally when you're a couple of beers into it.
Yeah, true. Oh, reminiscing. Yeah. But it sounds similar to me. I mean, I'm almost 50, but I was a young tacker when the Dragons won in 79. And my only memory of that is a few kids in the streets. There was a family who lived near us, and half the house was Dragons fans, half the house was Souths fans. But the girls were, singing St. George's won the comp, and I was like, oh, we won the comp, brilliant. But I'm too young to really understand it. And then went through the 80s where we sort of didn't do so well. We had a few fits and starts. I was holding on to a Panasonic Cup win that we had against the Tigers in the mid 80s. That was the only thing I'd seen. And then we go, what do? We make the grand final in 92 against the Broncos out from the clouds. Weren't expected to win. Got flogged. The next year we hit the Broncos again, but we had their measure that season. But I watched that game at the Leeds Club, and it was the most dull, flat atmosphere I've ever had. It was like a graveyard, and we lost that one. Come back in 96, which is my favourite year. Again, we started the year with no coach. Rod had gone to the Rams, and we're all had half a team at the start. We go on to make the grand final. Again, I'm at the Leeds Club. We don't make it. We didn't win that game. The Matthew Ridge / David Manson thing at just before half time still grinds my gears. So I'd just seen us lose 3. Then I was at the grand final in 99, so the Olympic Stadium, 110,000 people. I actually, in a former life, worked in construction and I worked on the Olympic site, so I got to see the whole thing evolve for the Olympics. And then my team's playing in the grand final. Brilliant, up 14-0 at half time, and we know what happened after that. And I'm just like, my God. So my 2010, when I was all of, what would I have been there, 37 years old, was my first. Yeah. And we were losing at half time. We were down. The Roosters were beating us. And I'm just thinking, oh, my God, I can't go through this again. I'm going to jump off the roof. I can't do it. And then there was this we scored the first try. I think it was Jason Nightingale. I was actually chatting to him when he popped over the other week. I was just saying, mate, you scored tries and helped my seed win the grand final that I thought I'd never see. But he scored the first one. And then it just brought a wave of, right, there was a second one, a third one. And the crowd that time was about 70% Dragons fans. And there was all around me, it was like, we're actually going to do this? Trepidation. There was like, right, there was a moment when Dean Young scored. That was like, right, we actually can't lose this now. And just the emotion, I'm actually getting tingles up the spine just talking about it, but just we're actually going to do it. There's people crying, hugging, just running around, just going nuts. For that last 15 minutes, you can actually enjoy the game that we were actually going to win it. Yeah. I got to see it. You got to see it in 2003. Cronulla fans got to see it. And that everyone can, hopefully, all league fans can see their side do it at least once in their life, because the feeling that you get when your side wins a comp, especially the first time you see it, there's nothing like it.
No, nothing at all. You can remember how you felt and how you were standing in that just everything, just absolutely everything. It really is incredible. Look, thank you for coming on and chatting with us about rugby league in Adelaide and of course the Dragons and the NRL overall. I'd say this to everyone before the podcast. If you've got something to plug, and you're like, I can plug my business, plug your business. What is the greatest business we've all got to support?
Plug away, rightio. My business is a business called Sell Yourself. And what it is, it's basically 360-degree coaching and support to job seekers. So in a former life, I used to work in the recruitment industry, managed a business out of Sydney. When I made the move to Adelaide, I decided to set up my own thing. So everything from how to search for the right jobs to CV optimization, so getting your CV tip-top, interview coaching, so not telling you what to say, but all the ins and outs of the interview process and how to best sell yourself in the interview, and also supporting you managing negotiations. So sometimes when you're going for a job, you're going to negotiate salary and that kind of thing, talking through the negotiation process. So the website is called www.sellyourself.com.au. You'll see my shiny big mug in one of the slides in there if you do want to go in there. Feel free to drop me a line, and if you mention the League Freak podcast, I'll do you a deal.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah. Thank you for coming on. It's been really interesting and awesome to talk to somebody that's actually on the ground, because there's plenty of people, including myself, that will say, let me tell you about Adelaide. But to actually talk to someone on the ground is 1,000 times more important than that. So thank you for coming on. And we'll have you back on again sometime soon just to chat about footy. We'll pick a random round or something and we'll say, hey, let's sort out this and we'll do a review of this. So yeah, once again, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me and the opportunity to do it. And look forward to the next time, mate, and talking a bit of footy. And anytime, give me a holler, we'll make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll catch you soon.
Palmerbet with the big don't argue. Punters will love that. Download our app today and enjoy tackle busting benefits with great odds, more markets and same game multi every NRL match at Palmerbet. Gamble responsibly. For Gamblers' Help, call 1-800-858-858.